Hello and welcome back to the final episode of the Character Animator character setup video. We're going to be actually working on the details of the character and then finally throwing the character into Adobe Character Animator and setting up and rigging the character for animation. So if you're not subscribed, definitely hit the subscribe button. Remember, that's always free to do. And you'll always be notified of the next episodes coming out. And no more talking, let's just jump right into it. I'm going to finish up some of the naming conventions to the character, doing the neck and just sorting out a few more parts. Now we're going to start setting up some of the detail to the character, adding the highlights and shadows. Now I actually want to add a little bit of movement to these breasts, so I'm actually just going to put them on their own little separate layer. And we're going to do like we did with some of the other things that have motion in Character Animator, like the arms and some like the hair even. Mostly this is a better example of the hair, because the hair actually has a little bit of bounce movement, and we're just going to add that to the breast. There's actually a tight-fitting dress that I'm actually trying to model, so we're just gonna do some highlights for just the actual anatomy that's gonna be under, showing like a little silhouette of the body underneath. This way it's actually pretty good to actually do a little research on human anatomy. I'm actually doing more of a stylized character, so I can actually exaggerate certain points of the character here. But it is always good to have a good foundation of anatomy, so you actually understand when you actually do some of those more exaggerated parts. I'm actually still a student of it myself, but definitely doing this more actually helps you to understand it. And I just want to lighten up those blues a little bit, making them not too dark, just a little subtle. And what I'm going to do for the thigh area, since like I said, the dress is actually pretty much like really tight around the female's body, so definitely want to show that the thigh is kind of pressed up against the inner parts of the dress. And yeah, I'm just adding a little bit of shapes here. Everything is actually set up with the pen tool. So, like I said, most of the time you want to actually use like basic organic shapes like circles and stuff like that. But doing the highlights, I just felt it was like, because those are sometimes unnatural shapes, the highlights. So I use the pen tool a lot for this. And if you're not familiar with the pen tool, just kind of quick illustrated training here, even though this is more about character setup. You just want to click in one spot and then click in another point and kind of bend around to create the shape, and just keep clicking from point to point just until you actually connect to the final point, so you get that shape you like. Now, I felt it was a little better to probably put the arms behind the breast so that you can see that the breast is actually out in front, which it would be. And I was actually experimenting with a little darkness to the arms, but we're just gonna leave it the regular color here. Kind of organize the layers a little bit, adding those highlights to those areas on the lower body and putting the ones on the upper body in the upper area. Good organization is actually great, especially for the character's movement. Because of if certain items, even highlights, is not in the proper area, it could cause deformation issues on a character when you're actually moving them in Character Animator. Yeah, I usually lock out the layers I don't want to actually mess with. So now that I'm moving back to the head, I actually lock the body layer so that I don't make any mistakes and click on or add anything to the body layer that I don't need to add to. We're just going back and adding those details to the eyes. Little lower shadows for the eye areas. And I'm putting that behind the very last layer in the eye, the lower eyelid, so that it actually can show in the lower eyelid. It actually is a great detail, so when she blinks, you see those little wrinkles in the face. Now for the lip area, we're gonna add those lower highlights and shadows. Now remember, there's a little overhang on the lip, so you wanna kind of highlight and shadow the darker areas, and of course the highlights you wanna actually make a little lighter. For her, she's a kind of little strange. You wanna, because she has a little gloss on her lips, so you wanna add a little sheen look to it. Probably the most tedious part about the character setup is organization of it. Sometimes I even make mistakes, and once I actually move into Character Animator, I won't notice that some parts of the body is moving incorrectly due to me not naming something right, or parts of the layers are not in the right area. But that's why I actually wanted to definitely show this video kind of more live and full, so you can see those mistakes. I still continue to make those mistakes. One way to kind of avoid them is definitely doing this, like having your layers set up before you start actually designing. The risk to that is sometimes you'll actually end up with, you just start designing and dropping shapes and stuff in and not adding them to that layer. So there's always the risk. Just always keep going back and looking at your layers and make sure that everything is in a proper area. You'll see me from time to time kind of turning off the visibility, just making sure everything disappears with that layer. Now adding the earrings here. So I'm just gonna use the cut tool here, the scissor tool, to kind of cut the wrap around because I'm gonna need this earring as a full group rather than separate because we want them to kind of dangle a little bit. And you actually see me add that little plus in front of that earring naming because this is going to be an item that's going to be in motion in Character Animator. So yeah, always note that if it's something that you need to move at all, just make sure you add that plus to the front of the naming. What's really cool about Character Animator is it actually picks up on stuff like that. It actually picks up automatically anything with a plus on it. You can always go into Character Animator itself and actually go in and add the little crown icon to make whatever item you forgot to add the plus to in motion. But I like to actually always have the plus so that I can reference what's going to be in motion from Illustrator in Character Animator. I'm actually cutting the neck here because I noticed I wanted the neck to actually be behind the head and in front of the body, but have a part of the neck move with the body. Okay, and she's actually looking really good. She's really coming along. As long as it's starting to look like somebody you want to actually get the number of, then you look like you're on the right track. So now we're just going to add some of the highlights to the earrings. Yeah, there is no fine trick to color and shading, just all in your style. So whatever your style is, that's what you actually want to definitely convey and get out. But also you do want to stick to those kind of basic things like lighting and making sure everything looks like it makes sense. I'll always go back to my other characters just to kind of use it as a reference to make sure I didn't make certain mistakes. But also I'm now going to grab the mouth of the other character, like I said, to reuse pretty much everything. This girl's lips is a little different from the previous character's lips, but we are going to use her mouth as a reference to create the other lips. Now, I'm not going to lie to you here. The mouth, making the mouth shapes, especially when you have a more complex mouth, is probably going to be the more time-consuming part of your character shapes in animation. But what I normally do is I just duplicate by holding Shift and an Alt key on a Mac, and you just want to, while holding those keys, you just want to drag down, and that'll actually duplicate the layer with all of the same setting, all the same stuff that's actually in that layer. And then you just could modify that layer so that you won't actually have to work so much on the lips. And definitely, like I said, take as many shortcuts as you can, especially in the lip area, because this is probably, like I said, the most time-consuming parts of it. So the trick here also is you want to, as you create the mouth, you want to actually find parts of the mouth that's very similar. So if you have O in woo, that's pretty similar. So you want to duplicate the O for the woo. Sometimes the M for the smile, stuff like that. For the smile here, I'm just adding a little lip curl, a little shadow area so you can see the smile since her lips are so pronounced. So I'm actually just going up and looking at my reference mouth that I got from my other character, and just looking at the lip shapes from that mouth and translating that over to these big forelips. So one thing I know that I had to actually design some teeth for this character, because some parts of the mouth is going to show teeth, and the teeth and tongue is necessary for creating some of them phonemes that you need for the certain letters. Especially like the F. Like, you definitely need to show some teeth for F. You might be able to get away gumming it, but it's not going to convey very well showing like gums, unless that's what you're going for, more of a gummy character. Yeah, I'm not gonna like make full teeth. I'm just gonna give the kind of illusion of like basic teeth, because it's not something you're gonna be looking at all the time. So all I have to do here is add like a little kind of a silhouette and add a little teeth highlights to give the illusion of teeth. You'll see how this works out once I throw it in the character's mouth. Make sure I want to group that together so it's easy to move. And it looked like dentures. The old lady dentures in the character's mouth. So I just moved that to the back of the mouth. And now we're just going to kind of shape the lips around the mouth. Like I said, this actually really reminds me of 3D modeling, or even sculpting in Blender, even though I haven't really gotten really good at that yet. But usually you add the eye and the teeth, and you basically sculpt around those things so that you can get the 3D feel of it. This is just more of a 2D type of thing, but this does give you the idea. And like I said, it's actually a lot easier doing this in 2D than it is in 3D. So this will give you a better foundation working in things like Illustrator and doing stuff like this. Now we're just gonna add that inside for the mouth. I'm just gonna leave this just a regular oval and move that to the back so you can see just the inside red of the mouth. Make it a little darker because we need to add the tongue as well. Move the highlights back, and we're just gonna shape these to shape around the lip. And you just keep moving down the list, working through the list. It gets a little easier and easier the more you keep creating, because more shapes is going to start to be similar to others. Yeah, so I kind of actually just sped that up because you get the idea of making a few of the other lips. So yeah, that's kind of like I said, a real time-consuming part. So once that's actually done, we're ready to move the character into Character Animator, doing some final checks just to make sure everything looks good. So you just want to import the character in, go into File and Import, and just locate your character. And may take a little time to load it depending on your details in the characters and how powerful your computer is. Now I usually use move the head layer right down to the chin area to represent the neck. And then I start working on some of those easier parts, like the dangling parts of the body, like the hair. You just want to move the points to the actual point. You want to move that to the very back of that, like the part. Like it's like you're pinning down the flap of the hair. And the dangle part, the part you want it to dangle from, you want to add that point to the very tip. So I'm just actually going through each one, moving that point back, and you'll get a little representation that that point is attached to the body by the body turning green. It'll give you a little indication. And then you just put your dangle points to the very end of that. Just thinking about it like a kind of a chain moving, right? So if you got the locking area that locks onto the part of the body, and then the part is going to dangle from goes to the very end. And the arm area, I just actually put those little joints in, and then the last part you want to drag the hands from, you put the little dragger tool from. And from the very body, what I did was I actually just dragged the anchor. You can usually just use a little point for this, but this is actually going to be the fixed area the body's going to move from. If you actually don't add that, the body actually will just kind of wave around, and you want to just have a fixed point so the body could bend from that point. So I'm just going to go through each one of these moving points. And you can see in the arms, I added those little joints. And the bending points, the parts from the arm that I actually didn't want to bend, to give it a little bit better deformation. Only in the joint area you want it to bend from. And I'm just going to check my mouth area just to make sure each phonemes is actually related to the phonemes in Character Animator. So you can see already, like I'm getting some of that good movement. I mean, the eyes is kind of popping out because I have that snap. You could actually mess with the settings on a lower, the kind of the right-handed pane. It'll show you. You'll see we have like dragger and a bunch of different settings that you could use. So yeah, in the eye gaze area, you do see it has camera input, camera strength. The camera input, if you actually have that on, allows the camera to actually move the eyes for you. And you can also use mouse and touch input that actually allow the mouse to be dragged. I don't really use that too often because also the arms usually drag with it as well. And you have a bunch of different, you play with these features. I usually turn off my snap eye gaze because it has, unless you're looking for something like that, the eyes kind of just snap around and it doesn't have that really good flowing movement. But you definitely want to play with some of these settings so your eyes move fairly well. Also, like looking at the eyes, you definitely want to mess with the eye pupil area. That usually sets the area where the eyeball can move around. I actually had to go on Illustrator and change, kind of reduce the area where my eye pupil is, since her eyes are very squinty, so that the eyes don't move out of the eyelid area like that. So here I'm back in the Illustrator, and I saw some issues with the eyebrows. So I saw I made some mistakes here, and just gonna change some of those naming conventions and jump right back over the Character Animator, and you'll see it actually reloads with that new information. And now we got both eyebrows moving pretty well. We can model her hands on her hips, make her look down. And right now, everything looks like it's moving pretty well. Yeah, like I said, you might have some issues where, especially if you have such a detailed character, where you're gonna see some issues. And now I'm back in Illustrator doing that. I'm confining the pupil area down a bit since she has such squinty eyes. And I only wanted to show like the pupil to move around this confined area now, not that whole eyeball, because her eyes area is not gonna need to move the pupil around that area. Yeah, these are some of the touch-ups that you might need to do when working with your character. And that's actually okay. Like Character Animator is pretty much real time. You can make edits, save it, go right back into Character Animator, and you'll see those changes take effect. And it's a lot better. Also in the physics, you can actually go down and play with the dampness and sometimes the stiffness, just kind of adjust these settings a little bit. And these are actually give you either raising the dampness, actually make those dangle areas droop a little bit more. Having that lesser value will kind of stiffen it a little bit. And you want to just play with these until you get the right feel. And finally, we actually have a full working female character set up from beginning to end. I know that was a pretty long video and a long series, but I actually wanted to definitely show the character set up from beginning to end. I thought that would be really important. But yeah, if you actually like this video, definitely go ahead and hit that like button. It'll tell YouTube that this was a good video. And remember to subscribe. I'm out of here.